Okay, I'd like to start the North St. Paul City Council meeting for March 3rd and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody. Mary, if you'd like to take roll.
Councilmember Thorson.
Here.
Councilmember Walzak.
Here.
Councilmember Sonic.
Here.
Mayor Furlong.
Here.
And Candy Peterson is absent today.
Do have a quorum. Motion to adopt the agenda. So moved by Councilmember Walzak, seconded by Councilmember Sonic. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. We have no presentations. We have the consent agenda, which is the February 18th, 2020 workshop meeting minutes, the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting minutes, the general accounts payable of $510,185.93, and the HRA accounts payable of $8,237.06. At this time, if anybody would like to pull anything from the consent agenda, they could do so at this time. If not, motion to accept.
Move to accept the consent agenda as is.
Motion by Councilmember Sonic,
I'll second your honor.
second by Councilmember Walzak. Any discussion? Not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I don't have anything for public? Nothing? Okay. No, there is no public hearing, so at this time, I'll turn over to city manager for city business action items and recommendations.
Mayor, Council, thank you. First item we have is the cable franchise agreement and the recommendation not to renew. So at this time, I have Tara Heiser, our Cable Commission representative. If you have any questions of him, maybe Tara could ask you to come up and we can just talk briefly about this. And this is a recommendation that's gone through all of our member cities and the same requested action of all member cities.
Thank you, Mayor Guzzle. I alluded to this at our meeting about 2-3 weeks ago at the high school, that we would be bringing forward basically a resolution to do a preliminary denial of the franchise renewal. And as I had discussed at that last meeting, in terms of franchise, at least the renewal that was submitted, there's just a handful of items yet that need to be resolved. Primarily, what does the franchise fee cover in terms of the gross revenue? There's still some questions on that. There was also some questions about the institutional network, the needs. There's a difference in needs from some communities to, from the others. And really trying to get through that to try to determine really what is the impact for North St. Paul collectively as a group and try to work through that. There was also some questions that they had about the service, customer service component of it. One of the things that came out in memo was specific to the convenience of at least a customer service center. I looked today and the closest ones would be Woodbury or Roseville. They're both within 15-minute drive of the city of North St. Paul. Is that an issue or not? That's basically one of the other questions that needs to be worked out. Plus, along with some of the other things with billing. The franchise, at least the proposal, is a little bit not specific to that, so that's one of the other things that they needed to work out. Again, I mentioned the INET capabilities, and then, of course, still trying to go through the equipment needs assessment and the disparity between what the collective commission as a whole needed for their PEG equipment over the next 10 years and how Comcast has derived their current PEG fee. There's a gap in between what the commission has said that they need and what Comcast is offering. So this is more of a formality because they submitted a response. Like a lot of our other bids, we had to act within a certain time period. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we are committed or have to hold to some kind of more thorough administrative hearing. I'm committed to continuing to try to at least get through the proposal that was submitted, because again, I'm in this about 6 weeks now 7 weeks, to at least help the council determine where we should go from here. Either continuing through this process, or going back to where you were 3-4 months ago, trying to determine if the city should kind of exact this on its own, or if we should try to find some other alternatives. But I think we're kind of still in that same timeline that we had talked about in December. Try to have a clear picture of where we need to be by June, at least a picture and understanding. So we have that available for us as we start to look at our 2021 budget.
And I would just follow up with that's exactly where we're at with this, that, with the timeline when we decided to drop out of this last year, that really looking how this progresses forward and make a decision where we are so that we're well ahead of our budget process and prepared for that.
Any questions for Terry? Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. So at this time, motion for preliminary assessment that the Comcast of Minnesota cable franchise should not be renewed. Is there a motion? So moved by Councilmember Sonic. Second by Councilmember Walzak. Any questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. City Manager Dudek.
Mayor, Council, thank you. The next item we have is the Anchor Commons storage facility that we've been discussing, and we have Aaron Perdue, our planning, will be presenting that for us.
Thank you, Scott. Mayor,
Welcome,
members
Erin.
of Council, thank you. Nice to be here a little early this evening. And the AV equipment is working, so that's great, too.
It's almost like HD.
Tonight, we'll be discussing the site plan review and variance request for Anchor Block Commons self-storage. Outlined in blue there is the parcel on Anchor Commons where the self-storage facility is being proposed. It has frontage on 3rd Street North and Anchor Drive. The access to the facility would be off of Anchor Drive. It's a little over 2 acres, currently zoned MU3 corridor mixed use. This is the site plan. If you tilt your head to the left, north is that direction. So again, that's the site. This is the site plan. The access, as I mentioned, would be off of Anchor Drive. The closest setback of the building is towards 3rd Avenue with Shifsky's to the east. The proposal is for approximately 700 storage units. It's a 3-story building, about 101 square feet. The variance request is because there is language in the ordinance that says that for warehousing and storage space shall not exceed more than 60% of the area of the principal building. Obviously, this is the principal building. The storage spaces account for about 73% of the space of the building. Mini storage and mini warehousing, as this is called, are a permitted use in this zoning district, but given the way self-storage is run nowadays, this is about the standard allocation of uses within the building. And so the applicant is requesting, and staff and planning commission have recommended approval of that variance so that 73% of the building can be used for storage. The rest of it is common spaces, hallways, offices, and utilities. There is no loading dock, but there is, right under here, there's a spot for people to pull in and load and unload their stuff that they're storing or taking out of storage. There is also a pull-in entrance located right here where people can actually pull into the building. So there are 2 spots for loading and unloading. The landscaping plan, so the areas that are showing in gray on your screen there, the speckled color are landscaped areas. They meet our open space area requirements. There is one landscaping issue with trees. According to the square footage of the building, because it's 3 stories, there would be 101 trees required on the site. They're providing, at least in the preliminary plan, they're providing 36. There is flexibility allowed in your ordinance if we determine that trees would be overcrowded if they put the required number on the site. And so the recommended condition from the Planning Commission was that they work to increase the number of trees up to the point so that it, right up to the point where we would consider it overcrowded. We don't want it to be overcrowded, but we want more trees than what they have. I'll let the applicant speak to this, but I believe they've already taken some time to go back and look at these and figure out where they could put some more landscaping. The northwest corner of the site here is for stormwater management. There is a landscape buffer area around the parking lot as we require. In terms of parking, they're also requesting fewer parking spaces than what is required. If we look at warehousing or mini warehouse as the primary use, there would be 25 parking stalls required. They have provided documentation that that kind of demand for parking is not needed, and your ordinance, the citation is here, allows you to reduce the amount of parking based on low demand, and we feel that the information they've submitted suffices to demonstrate that there isn't demand for more parking on the site.
So how many are we going to have?
Oh, I'm sorry, 11 spaces are proposed. So if you take a look back at the site plan, there's parking, including handicap parking, all along the south side of the building here. There are also obviously spots for people to park while they're loading and unloading here and in that interior bay, but 11 standard parking spaces. And then architecture, we reviewed this against the city's architectural standards. There's a variety of materials, including textured metal, brick veneer, metal trim, glass windows, and all of those materials meet your architectural requirements. The front facade, which is the one that you're looking at here, facing Anchor Drive, which is here, does have some articulation, some tall windows, and some brick on that facade, and so that also meets your architectural requirements. And so our recommendation was approval of the requested variance. Again, that's just distribution of the interior space greater than 60% of the limit on storage space, and then conditional approval of the site plan. There were a number of engineering conditions, and so those would be requirements, fire review, some of the landscaping, in addition to increasing it, needs to be moved out of the drainage and utility easements, and I believe they've already taken a look at that. You have a requirement for a sidewalk connection to Anchor Drive, and so we're requiring that. I understand they've looked at that already. And some slight modifications need to be made to the lighting plan because around the edges of the site, there are portions that exceed your lighting limit. And so they are working to address those. And that those could all be submitted administratively and reviewed that way. So that is the recommendation of staff, and the Planning Commission unanimously made that recommendation at their meeting last week. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have, and I believe the applicants are here as well.
Any questions for Aaron?
Signage on the list. Do we see a sign, or has that not been?
We have not seen a sign plan. We see some conceptual signage on the renderings, but that would they'd have to submit sign applications and get those approved separately.
Okay, so that just hasn't come down the
This
pipe.
hasn't come on yet, yep.
Councilmember Sonic.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment regarding the variance. Chair Barton of the Planning Commission and the rest of us had discussed the need for this variance in the first place, and we think there's another instance where we could do more with the code as it is written, because to have a maximum amount of building that could be used for storage doesn't. It's basically would not allow any kind of storage building. You would always have to apply for a variance with a retail storage building like this, and it really depends on how you look at this type of business, because technically you could say that the storage company itself is not using any of its space for storage. all of it is being used as rental retail space. It's not, they're not storing anything there. Other people are storing things there. So it's not as if it's a typical business that is also warehousing, more than 60% of their product in this space or something like that, which I don't know why that is a problem either, but that's a different discussion. So I just wanted to make the council aware that the commission was considering the language in this ordinance as it is, in case, who knows, somewhere down the line, another storage building wants to be built here.
Great. I guess that was my question, or I hadn't had a chance to listen to the planning commission, but that was my question. It just seems rather odd that a variance request is even required for a warehouse, and that we have a limitation on how much of a warehouse can be used for warehousing. I guess when you get into technicalities as far as, well, it's technically rental space, it makes even more sense, but it just seems very odd that we're putting you through this, I guess. And so,
They'd have to be here for the site plan anyway,
Yeah. Right.
so.
but
yeah,
I'm glad to hear that that's something that, as these things come up, there's discussion, and it's not just, that's in the book, so I think, I'm trying to think back of my time on the planning commission, where these sorts of things were all conditional use permit, and a warehouse wasn't even allowed, and then when the whole code was rewritten, that sort of thing went away to grant more flexibility, but it seems like this is just something that kind of dovetailed on. And
Yeah. And I think there's other opportunities for us as well to just allow for greater flexibility in some of these things. I mean, granted, we would be allowing for some variance in some ways, although I don't think it's required as a variance for the parking issue. But, as a city, I think we should be talking about parking and requiring the minimum parking stalls necessary, rather than having just kind of some odd number that fits with square footage, because then we end up paving everything. And I think what we want to try and do here is err on the side of keeping more green space, and so the parking stall should always take into consideration what the specific use of the structure is. Tree plan as well. I know, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think they had already reviewed the tree plan as is, and were able to about double the number of trees, right, that they're looking at, so it's somewhere in the 70s. Oh, wow. And even that, so it's, of course, that would be 70-some more trees than are there right now.
Yeah.
So it'd be a massive improvement over what's there right now. So, but this, I think, kind of gets back to some of that tree requirements or not having tree requirements that we had talked about before, where with the other development for the duplexes. So I think there's just ways that we could look at our code to allow for some of these things when necessary.
yeah, absolutely. I think Target comes to mind when you think about that. I mean, there's something where the code was in there, the square footage you had, and now it's just this
The
massive
ocean of
parking lot
asphalt,
that-
yeah.
I mean, it was convenient when we needed it for staging for the trash bin stuff,
Yeah.
but I think even,
Yeah,
it's good to keep that kind of mindset moving forward too, and kind of think of things a little differently than, what's the need, not, some calculation on what they feel is necessary.
right. And here you've got a developer who can provide some data, some evidence as to what a reasonable amount of parking spaces is for a structure like this. I think that's something that we can look at and understand the value that's there, so that we don't end up paving more than we need to.
Mayor and Council, I just wanted to also comment on the tree issue. I think that, trees are important, and I think the site plan that they had proposed so far was at 36 provided, and based on square footage, was talking about 101 trees required. And just to have that practicalness, that we're not jamming a bunch of trees in, even at the 70, to make sure that that's really realistic and fit, that we're not putting these trees in 5 years from now, we're cutting down every other one. And to some extent, the business is going in, they want portions of their business visible. that we're not overcrowding things.
The trees should be more in relation to the open space or the green space than the square footage of the structure,
Right.
you know? And what does the square footage of the structure have to do with anything?
101,000 square feet this building is.
Right. And so especially, that's including. 3 stories. Yeah. So it's not, you know, but how much, you can only fit so many trees on the open green space that's
Right.
available.
Any other questions? Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to come up and introduce yourselves, and welcome to our city, and we're looking forward to working with you. So,
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Max French with Adams French Property. I'm the development manager. With me this afternoon, I have Todd Mohagan, our architect, as well as Robbie Latta, who is our engineer on the project, to hopefully help me answer any technical design questions you may have this afternoon. Our company has been doing self-storage development and operation for about 20 years now. I've been in the business for about 5 years. We are really excited about this project, excited to work in North St. Paul. This is the highest quality of self-storage facility that there is today. It is a fully enclosed, climate-controlled self-storage that I think the city really needs from a demand standpoint. So with that, I'll keep it brief and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just got one question, Adam. When did this actually start with a self-storage like this? This type of
new
design?
generation of storage, I guess, or the design has been, this has been popular, I would say, since probably, it's been 6 to 8 years now that they've started to build these fully interior climate-controlled storage.
Did it start out in the cold states, or did it start
Either
out east,
it's
west,
been
or-
it's either been in the northern states or down in the south in Florida, where air conditioned and humidity controlled space has been in high demand for people storing all kinds of household goods and stuff like that. So
Because if you look at your buildings, you can't even tell it's a storage building.
yeah, and that's the intention, and that's you know, we want our customers going up to a 24-hour highly secured facility that, you know, they feel has quality written all over it, that they can store their most valuable items.
Now, will yours have like open space in it for meetings at all, or I know the one down on English and 36 has an open room where people can have like a meeting in there, or
We don't have.
a common area?
We have an office on the that would be the southwest side, I guess. So and that has 2 podium style stand-up tables for, I guess, the manager to meet with customers and things like that. But we don't have any sort of conference area, no.
Any other questions for? Not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you. So at this time, I think I have 2 resolutions. First one is resolution approving a variance from section 154 of the North St. Paul City Code. Motion for that. So moved. So moved by Councilmember Sonic,
Second.
second by Councilmember Thorson. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. And the second motion is the resolution approving a site plan for self-storage development on the property at the northeast corner of Anchor Drive and 3rd Street North. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Thorson,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Walzak. Any discussion? Councilmember?
Just want to add, they do, Max, your company has 3 other structures here in the Twin Cities area, right? There's Bloomington, Roseville, and Crystal. Correct. So if anyone has wanted to see, you know, the style or quality of the structure that they'll be putting up, those would be pretty similar?
Yes, very similar.
Okay.
I think the renderings on paper often don't do the buildings as much justice as seeing them in real life, so I'd be happy to provide the addresses of those facilities so you guys can see what it looks like in person.
Yeah, also, just for kind of safety, security reasons as it pertains to the building, so there's not an external fence around the property, right? But individual clients will have gate codes that will allow them into the building. So that's how people will be able to access the building. And it has controlled hours from 7 to 10 during the week, 9 to 8 on Sunday. But, so it just kind of points to what we would be looking at there. I've seen, you know, some of these structure or storage units that I've dealt with in the past, you know, they kind of look like prisons or something. They got big fences around the outside, and you have to go through a gate on the outside and drive through and that type of thing. But, so I think this will just fit into the community very well that way.
I think that just goes with the quality of the project. I mean, that's different than what we normally see. You see these
Yeah.
U-Haul with the, like you say, the big fences and cameras all over the place, and
Right?
this won't be that way.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have any issues with.
It's not going to look like Stillwater Prison or something
Right,
like that.
exactly. Okay. So the motion, we do have the motion, has been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Welcome. City Manager Dudek.
That's the last business action item, Your Honor.
Well, that's not it for you, though, so. Reports of city manager and departments.
Just a couple items. We have, as spring is starting to come around the corner and weather is warming up, we will have load limits, our street road restrictions will be going on this Friday. So that's a kind of a exciting time, or a sign of spring is near. So those will be going on Friday of this week.
Do you know the road on Eldridge is closed? Do you know?
Yes, Public Works was up there with them today. That was due to a sewer line break that was repaired. They had to dig up the road and do an extensive rework to the house there, and they're working on restoration to get that back in place. Yep. And that was done by a private contractor, wasn't by our crews. Then next, we also have upcoming again, a Business Association meeting on March 10th, where our electric utility department will be the topic. We're going to be talking about energy efficiencies and potential going out and doing energy audits of our local businesses. We'll have a company there, Franklin Energy, will be our one of our consultants on staff. So we're going to talk about that, and then in the future, setting up those audits or those visits with our businesses to see how we can help save energy on the businesses. So again, looking for a good turnout next week with that. Also, Ramsey County had contacted us, and staff attended a meeting about the continued operation of the aerator at Silver Lake. And Ramsey County is looking to shed that responsibility back to someone, at least in some fashion. So they're looking at trying to shed back the operational cost, maintenance cost, and things. So we're waiting to see where that's going to fall. North St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, the watershed. Sounds like Valley Branches. There's been some discussion with them also, so we'll see where that's going to all shake out with that. Just so you know that that's going on. And then the work has started down at Casey Lake on the outlet clean out into the lake that we talked about earlier this year. That work was supposed to have taken place in February, but they just started it now. And today we had unfortunate, the contractor had run over or damaged one of the memorial park benches that was installed there, which was quite upsetting to the family that had placed it. So we're working with the contractor and the watershed on that to make sure that that's is replaced and is handled respectfully. What else do I have for you? Also going to be working with the post office, and I wanted to bring this up as kind of a forethought, but our next council meeting, our intention is to bring to you, looking for your approval to return Sepulveda Boulevard to two-way traffic between Margaret and Helen Street. So I'll be bringing that to you at the next council meeting, and working with the post office and relocating the mailboxes from the rear of the post office back into our municipal parking lot where they used to be for traffic access. So those are a couple items working on, and bring back to the next meeting.
Reports of council, commissions, and committees. Council member
Sonic.
Sonic.
Yeah. No, so at our last planning commission meeting, which was just last Thursday, we reviewed the storage facility, and happy to see that come to the council right away and move forward. And this Thursday, we are going to be reviewing an apartment complex that would be on the adjacent property at the Anchor Commons. Is that what you call that, right? Anchor Commons. So it's exciting. So we'll be looking at variance request and a site plan review for the apartments. And also, so big planning commission meeting this Thursday. We'll also be looking at a text amendment for the keeping of chickens and bees. So if anybody wants to learn about that, it's going to be very exciting. There was a public hearing for the variance request for the multifamily apartments, but there is not a public hearing scheduled at this time for the chickens and bees. Thanks.
Councilmember Walzak. Councilmember Thorson.
I have nothing.
Back to Councilmember Sonic for general business.
Voting day, we're here early, get out and vote.
Councilmember Walzak. Councilmember Thorson.
Just wanted to comment on Sepulveda going back to a two-way. I'm glad to hear that. I know it's it's been a one-way for a while, but I think it still functioned as a two-way street oftentimes, and so I'm just glad to have had feedback from people asking why it ever happened in the first place. So I'm just glad to hear that
Yes.
that's going to be a positive change, I think. And then winter parking. I know that's in effect till March 31st, and I know we're not out of the woods yet. It's still winter, so knock on wood. But I know in the past when weather's been cooperative, we've suspended that. Has there been discussion about that, or we gotta
There's-
wait till it gets a little closer to the end of the month?
There hasn't, but there will be. I mean, if the weather continues, we can certainly relax it conditionally on receiving a plowable snow.
Okay. That's all I have.
I'll just add, Mayor, if I could just add to the park or the Sepulveda Boulevard. So at the Business Association last meeting, I think I brought it up there and, had a pretty resounding cheer for that return. And last week I was spoke at the Historical Society meeting about all the happenings in the community, and I brought the subject up there also, and it was the same resounding yes. So I think it's been will be received well.
I know there is a couple of businesses who have great concerns over the safety as you walk out their door.
Yep.
We got to have some sort of either barrier or whatever. It can be very dangerous.
And in line with that, with the, for the submittal at our upcoming council meeting, I am working on a striping layout to show, well, my thought is that we'll shift the lane of traffic as far to the north as possible. So the traffic lanes will be shifted as far to the north as possible and then leave as much buffer as we can along the back of the buildings.
Why was it made one way in the first place?
It was moved, I think it was, I can't remember if it was back in 2010, I believe is when the change, we were trying to go back and look at records, when the change was, and I don't know an actual driving reason at that point.
I think a lot of it had to do with when the highway went through, and we decided that we didn't do Centennial from all the way through to Margaret, and that kind of got taken out, and so MnDOT came in, and this was their doing, making it one way, because that was the only way then that a bike trail could be put in, a bike path, which never actually ended up happening, to bring them down to come through town. And so that was how MnDOT said it had to be done that way because of the bicycling.
Okay. I just have a couple items here. One is evidently Pool Arena donated some ice time for an open skate. So they're going to have a family skating day at Pool Arena at no cost on Saturday, March 21st from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. And there will be complimentary hot chocolate served at that time. But they have no skate rental that day, so you gotta bring your own skates, and helmets are suggested. Also, I'd like to thank Councilmember Walzak for taking my place this morning, or yesterday morning, in regards to mayor for the mayor open hours. Just got back late last night from my daughter's wedding, so I want to thank Councilmember Walzak for doing that. From what I hear, she had a line of people out there, so thank you for doing that.
Honored to do it for you, Mayor.
Other than that, I think that's all I have, so at this time, a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Your Honor.
Moved by Councilmember Walzak.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sonic. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion to adjourn. 4:36.